Independence Day does not represent the Black Passover. The equivalent for Black Americans is commemorated by the eradication of legal slavery in Juneteenth. Juneteenth is a day to be recognized and celebrated. It is the end of an abomination, the greatest stain on American history, which has never, frankly, been repented. The Emancipation Proclamation put the power of the U.S. military behind the cause of abolition. The Declaration of Independence and the underlying words of this statement is artful and admirable. The authors, the signatures, relieved and overtaxed people from the monetary obligations of its mother country and allowed it to pursue its own governance by its own elected leaders. However, it did such while ignoring the subjugation of some of its own people. I've always declared myself patriotic. I prefer sweet potatoes to apple pie. I don't eat hot dogs, don red, white, and blue garbs to commemorate Independence Day. But I root for the U.S. in hockey, track, baseball, and international competition. I pray ardently for our leadership to do God's will. I have an affinity for this land as it is where generations of my forefathers have toiled, died, fought, and served. I was born here. My children were born here. And it is much mine, glaring warts and all, as Donald Trump's or Joe Biden's. I think about the blood that spilled, the tears that were shed, the lives that were lost so that Thomas Jefferson, John Hancock, and the like could even stand bold enough to pursue independence. My forefathers, descendants of African tribes, planted, seeded, tilled, and harvested the cotton and tobacco upon which early American economies thrived. They raised the children, cooked, cleaned, and transported, built and secured buildings and structures that housed everything from our clothing and furniture to our nation's money. The words of the Declaration of Independence did not ring true for the enslaved in 1776. However, I am the grandson of 2 war vets and have the history in this country, and I have a history in this country of over 7 generations, longer than our current president. It gets me thinking about double-mindedness. I'm a Christian. I follow Christ, but I live in a society living gleefully in sin, guilty in ways myself. I'm an American. I'm as American as football, white bread, and mullets. I'm as black as football, cornbread, and afros. I've heard the term double-minded used to describe the state of black consciousness in America. And I understand the intent of that description. However, double-minded means waver. And I don't waver on my American citizenry and roots. I surely do not waver on my blackness. Well, folks need to understand that my story is an American story. It is not, there isn't an American story and then there's this side story. No, my story is an American story. Being black and American, I can strongly oppose its actions, but maintain my connection and citizenry. America has been an enemy to black folks, but black people have not been an enemy to America. The fact that we view America as only represented by apple pie is a symptom of the problem that we have allowed to fester too long. It's the ignorance of black contribution, therefore understanding, appreciation, and celebration of the American fabric as something that is an integral part of that fabric, not a side story. We're not the opening act. We're not part of another band. We are part of the collective voice that has made up the chorus that has rung out over history. Wentworth Cheswell rode north while Paul Revere rode west to warn colonists that the redcoats were coming. Right. We don't hear about Wentworth Cheswell, again, because America has decided that the black voice should be muted. But it doesn't mute the effectiveness nor mute what he did. Crispus Attucks is a man of Native American and African heritage, is widely considered the first man to give up his life for England, and for our war with England. There were 9,000 black soldiers who fought in the Revolutionary War. And their time served on average was 4.5 years, due to many serving the whole 8-year duration, which was 8 times longer than the average period for white soldiers, meaning that while there were only 4% of the manpower base, they made up 4%, they comprised a quarter, 25% of the Patriots' strength in terms of man hours. 25% of the man hours during the Revolutionary War, the American Revolution, were fought by black people. Black people fought for the freedom of a country that did not stand for his. Eventually, just about 90 years later, after the drafting and signing of the Declaration of Independence, as a pawn in the necessary war, the freedom of enslaved people and rebellious states was codified. The America that was declared independent by the declaration of such had finally included all of its citizens in the intention of that doctrine. The term double-minded refers to people who waver, who are unsteady. It's actually first coined in the book of James, which deduces that word from the Greek dipsuchos, meaning a person who has two minds or souls. A double-minded person is what Jesus had in mind when he spoke of one who tries to serve two masters. As such, he is unstable, unsteady, wavering in both character and feelings. The term was spun off by W.E.B. Du Bois in The Souls of Black Folk in 1897 when he wrote and he described about the African American experience of double consciousness, including his own. Double consciousness is the internal conflict experienced by subordinated or colonized groups in an oppressive society. Originally, double consciousness was specifically the psychological challenge of African Americans, experienced of always looking at oneself through the eyes of a racist white society and measuring oneself by the means of a nation that looked back in contempt. The term also referred to Du Bois' experience of reconciling African American or African heritage with an upbringing in a European-dominated society. And people forget, Du Bois was Harvard educated. It is not though he just toiled and spent his time amongst his, so to say, own. Paul the Apostle. Paul the Apostle was Roman. He was a Roman citizen. He was a Jew who became a model Christ follower. He was not part Roman or part Jewish and part Christian. He was wholly Roman, wholly Jewish, wholly Christian. I am wholly black or of African descent. I am wholly American. They are not mutually exclusive. Falling into this notion, and I'll call it a trap loosely, but falling into this loose trap, celebrating America as celebrating colonialism and its European offspring only, is buying into the message of white nationalism that only Europeans and European descendants have contributed to what has become this nation. And that mistake has got to be corrected and not accepted. Though Wentworth Cheswell did not get the props that Paul Revere did because of his African ancestry, though Crispus Attucks is not studied as a martyr for America in our schools because of his pedigree, the 54th Massachusetts Infantry isn't renowned. And let me give a little bit of dialogue on them. This was the Union Army's 2nd African American Regiment in the American Civil War. We know of them because the movie Glory was authored about them. And they did a number of fantastic things. Towards the end of the war, they actually reclaimed. They helped to set up the reclamation of an important battle point at the Battle of Olisset, where they gave up their lives to reclaim it. They were an all-black brigade. They helped and attacked and entrenched the Confederate militia at the Battle of Honey Hill in November 1864, and then in mid-April 1865, they fought the Battle of Boykins Mill, which proved to be one of the last engagements of the war. But just to show how dedicated and how important they were to the fight, to the cause, there was a train of Union soldiers that was stranded. The locomotive engine failed, and they were going to be captured and imprisoned. These men, this troop, was called back. They were ordered back to rescue the train of injured white soldiers. They marched back, tied rope to the train, and pulled the train 3 miles till they could get to horses. And then along with some horses, they pulled it another 10 miles. 42 hours it took for them to pull the train that 13 miles to rescue their fellow soldiers, their fellow Americans who, in their efforts for freedom, fought together. The 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment is an example of soul. They volunteered to fight, were paid less, mistreated, and unappreciated, but were an integral unit in securing American victory. They made something glorious out of a pittance. You tell me, were they patriots? Were they American? Is celebrating them a black thing? An American thing? Is it both? There are many things that the devil is good at. And though there are many issues we have in this country of ours, not theirs, he authors, the devil that is, a confusion, a false narrative that benefits white supremacy and alienates people of many backgrounds that have ancestral, cultural, familial connection to the birth and growth of the U.S. Just as I am a child of God who believes that in him there is neither Jew nor Greek, nor slave nor free, nor male nor female. We are all one in Christ. I know that in this nation, we are far from the utopia of God's kingdom. However, I am thankful. I'm thankful for the Declaration of Independence. And though I recognize that its words were not meant for me when it was drafted, it inspired a freedom that birthed a country that has grown and continues to have to grow, that produced warriors who fought for its words to apply to all people. I do not buy into this foolishness that the 4th of July is a white holiday. Pride in America is not pride in white stuff. Frederick Douglass, Phyllis Wheatley, Joe Louis, Little Richard are all made in America, and just as American as Abraham Lincoln, Babe Ruth, and Elvis. Until our nation's politics embodies the words of the Declaration of Independence and resembles the kingdom set forth in Galatians 3:28, I choose to use days like Independence Day to remember the work that this country needs to do to stand up for all of its people, all of the people who stood up for it. On this Independence Day weekend, peace be with you.